That's Chair.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to our November Audit Committee meeting. We have just started the streaming, so this is a public meeting and we are being live streamed on YouTube. So remember that. Do we have any apologies this morning, Dave?
I haven't received any apologies this morning, Chair.
Okay, are there any declarations of interest in relation to anything on the agenda today? No, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, can we move then to the minute of our last meeting back on 15 September? Always run through them first for accuracy. Anything on what in the pack is page 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Can we accept those then as a true record? Thank you. Are there any matters arising that don't appear elsewhere on today's agenda? Nope, not seeing anything. Okay, move on to item 4 then, which is the Strategic Risk Register. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides an update on the IJB Strategic Risk Register. No new risks have been added to the register since the last version, which was presented to the Audit Committee on the 15th of September. So there are currently 9 live risks. 1 is considered very high risk, 7 are high risk, and 1 is medium risk. The register is routinely reviewed and updated through the senior leadership team on a monthly basis, the Audit Committee on a quarterly basis, and it's presented to the IJB board biannually as well. The table in section 4.1 provides a summary of the 9 risks, and the detailed risk register is provided within Appendix 1. In reading that, it should be read in conjunction with the risk assessment scoring matrix, which can be found at Appendix 2. Each risk was reviewed in detail, and while there's been no overall change to individual risk ratings, a number of key considerations are noted in the bullet points in section 4.3. As previously noted, it's our intention to separate risk 4 into 2 separate risks, and we'll do that as part of the next deep dive, and we're looking for dates for that as we speak. Currently, there are increasing pressures impacting the risk rating for financial sustainability, and this will be reviewed once the 2024-25 business case has been presented to the IJB board, and we're scheduled to do that on the 1st of December. Work continues to progress both care at home and adults under 65 procurement frameworks. And again, an update for care at home is coming to the next IJB board meeting. Within Appendix 1, each risk has been presented in the usual format, and the footnote to each risk summarises recent activity. You will also see that where a deep dive is still to take place, we've listed the initials of the people who will be invited to participate in those deep dive exercises. So I will just take you back to the recommendations, where the Audit Committee is asked to consider and comment on the high level summary of the Strategic Risk Register, and consider and comment on the detailed Strategic Risk Register. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Any comments or questions from members? No, I think the only couple of things I picked out, I mean, one was what you'd mentioned, Stephen, in relation to financial sustainability. Yeah, it is at least high, if not very high, given the situation we know that all IJBs are facing right now. But I think you're right to say that we look at that when we have more information. The other issue that comes up in this paper, and I think elsewhere as well, is the review of integration scheme, which I know is still ongoing. I wondered if there was a kind of target end date for that review process. Patricia?
Yep, so there was a wee bit of delay with support from Scottish Government. We've now had a conversation with the 3 local authority chief execs and the interim NHS Forth Valley chief executive, and have agreed to do a joint review of the integration schemes, and have identified external support for that, for someone who had supported another IGB to do the same. So that is being commissioned. So we would expect that will gather pace early in the new year. We haven't, once that person's fully appointed, then we will absolutely set a realistic end date for that. But I think it's a significant step forward that we've got that agreement across the 3 councils and the NHS to do it together for both IGBs. So I mean, I welcome having external support to help us to do that. Thanks.
No, that all makes perfect sense to me. That's reassuring. Thank you, Patricia. Did anyone else have questions or comments? Seeing any hands? No. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 5 then, which is the National Audit Report and Inspection Overview. Stephen.
Thank you again, Chair. So this report provides an overview of relevant national audit, scrutiny and inspection reports that have been published since the previous audit committee. A total of 5 reports have been published since the last meeting, 3 by the Care Inspectorate and 2 by Audit Scotland. The table in section 4.1 lists the national reports that have been issued. Excuse me, and if you've got a digital copy of these papers, there are embedded links within the table to the original reports. The Adult Mental Health Report aims to address the question of how well mental health services are being delivered across Scotland, and the report focuses on progress made since 2017, when the Scottish Government published its mental health strategy for the 10 years 2017 through to 2027. The report is in 4 parts, as listed in section 4.3. And while the report acknowledges that integration joint boards are responsible for planning, commissioning and monitoring adult mental health services, it also recognises that the system is complex, with services provided by health and social care partnerships, NHS boards, councils, charities, voluntary sectors, and all of that makes accountability complex. The report itself cites insufficient Scottish Government oversight and a lack of measurement of quality of care and outcomes for people, often focusing instead on inputs, how much we have invested in the process. Non-recurring funding has presented a challenge when trying to recruit to permanent posts, and funding delays have impacted progress within primary care. The mental health workforce is under pressure with high vacancy rates, and turnover. Within the report itself, it includes a number of case studies, including the Trieste model in Northern Italy and the Tayside Mental Health Services inquiry. The report notes mixed progress and suggests Scottish Government is not on track to deliver additional commitments, which include increasing mental health funding by 25%, ensuring that 10% of frontline health spend is on mental health, and giving all GP practices access to primary care, mental health and wellbeing services. So the other report is entitled Best Value in Scotland and is a reflection on 20 years of auditing best value in councils and a consideration of next steps in the drive for continuous improvement. The report provides a synopsis of how the approach has evolved since it was first introduced in 2003. And as local government bodies, integration joint boards are also covered by the duty of best value. The report on changes over time, and that would include increased reliance on self-assessment, more accessibility through the use of social media and Audit Scotland videos to increase engagement and interest in this particular area. Notable progress has been made And there are areas that have been commonly identified as needing more progress, and they're noted in section 4.12. So, in conclusion, councils and IJBs need to radically rethink how they operate and how they work within their communities. Section 5 of the report notes the inspection reports, and there have been 3 care inspection reports issued since our last update to the Audit Committee. These are routinely presented to the Clinical and Care Governance Committee. Again, within the table, the 3 reports have an embedded link if you want to have a look at them, assuming you've got a digital copy of the papers. And back to the recommendations themselves, the Audit Committee is asked to consider and comment on the content of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks again, Stephen. Any comments or questions? Patricia?
Yep, just apologies, there's a typo on the table at 5.1. The middle line should read Thornton Gardens. Apologies, we didn't pick that up. Just in case people think we've got another care home.
I'd actually read it as Thornton Gardens, to be honest. I hadn't even noticed there was a typo. Okay, thanks for that. I think when you look at the issues raised in 4.12, they're actually more or less the same issues that were raised in the adult mental health report, which is probably no surprise given where we are with public services generally. I think that there is an awful lot in the mental health report, including quite a few recommendations that affect IJBs directly, so it would be worth a close look at that. While it is kind of structured around what is now the old mental health strategy, the 1727 strategy has been superseded by the new strategy, the delivery plan for which was just released last week. But many of the issues are, of course, the same around those access issues and the complexity of the system. So there may be things there we need to look at as an IJB in due course. Okay, any other questions or issues on that? Okay, can we note the reports then? Okay, thank you. So item 6 is the Audit Committee Governance Report. Stephen, yourself again.
You should. Yeah. I was assuming David was doing this one, so I haven't quite prepared.
Okay.
But I will. It's fine. So the purpose is really to propose a programme of meetings for the committee for the next year. And attached as an appendix is the indicative forward plan for 2024. So very, very briefly, in section 4.2, we have the proposed meeting dates for next year, proposing that each meeting starts at 9:30 on the 1st of March, 18th of June, 17th of September and 15th of November. It's obviously important we get these dates out early so that we can see if there are any potential clashes with any other dates. I'm aware that we took this to pre-agenda and there were some clashes at that point. So hopefully these new dates are now compatible and we can get these embedded in everyone's diary. The appendix 1, and I'll just jump straight to that, outlines a plan for next year in terms of what reports we expect to take to which committee cycles. For me, selfishly and personally, the unaudited and audited accounts are two of the main ones. We know we have to have the unaudited accounts approved by a relevant committee of the IHIV by the 30th of June, and then the audited accounts by the 30th of September. So those are key dates from me. From a selfish perspective, some of the reports are the standard ones that we receive each audit committee, the strategic risk register, and so forth. So I won't say any more. I'll just pass it back to yourself, Chair, in case there's any questions on this report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Any questions or comments from members? Nope. The dates are fine. Thank you for re-looking at them. There were a number of them that were Fridays that clashed with Forth Valley's Staff Governance Committee, which both Robert and I sit on. So it's good that we've avoided those clashes. And I think meeting the accounts date is not just a selfish thing, Stephen. It's a big issue for the IJB as a whole to be meeting that timetable. So that looks perfectly acceptable to me. So I'm happy with those dates if everyone else is. Yep, I'm seeing nods around the table, so if we can agree that. Okay, thanks everyone. So item 7 then is the terms of reference. Who's going to take us through this one?
I'll take us through that one as well, Chair. And again, I'll be very brief because they haven't changed from the previous one. So very briefly, the report presents the terms of reference to the Audit Committee as part of our annual review. The terms were last reviewed by the Audit Committee on the 2nd of December 2022, so roughly a year ago. And there are no revisions to the terms of reference, which you will find attached as Appendix 1 to this report. So I'll leave it at that actually and just refer back to the recommendations that the Audit Committee is asked to review the terms of reference included in Appendix 1. Those terms consider membership, administrative arrangements, purpose and functions of the Audit Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, always good practice to be reviewing our terms of reference just to make sure they're still relevant. But I'm certainly content that they seem to be working well. So if it ain't broke, let's not try and fix it unless anyone has questions or recommendations for anything we might wish to look at. You're all very quiet again this morning. Okay, I'll take that as everyone being happy to accept the recommendation that we approve as is. Yep, I'm seeing some nods. Thank you. Okay, rushing on then to item 8, which is the governance statement improvement actions.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides an update on progress to implement a range of improvement actions that have been identified through the annual governance statement and from various internal and external audit report recommendations. The improvement actions themselves are grouped into 4 broad categories, and we see these listed in section 4.1 with additional detail contained within Appendix 1. So the 4 categories being progress with the integration scheme and MSG self-assessment, implementation of the 6th Financial Management Codes, Audit Committee self-assessment against good practice principles, and the 4th lot being the other internal and external audit reviews. For each broad category, the current position is noted in Appendix 1, as I said, with a target completion date. The RAG status is in respect of target completion date, with green indicating expected completion is in line with original timelines, amber indicates some slippage, and red indicating significant slippage against the target completion date. So there has been progress since the previous audit committee with the integration scheme and with the MSG self-assessment actions, with the MSG self-assessment being considered at an August board development session and priority actions considered at the extended senior management team meeting, which took place back in September. An update was provided to the IJB board in September within the Chief Officer report, and the Chief Finance Officers have reviewed the finance section of the integration scheme. We probably require one final meeting just to finalise the revisions that we are suggesting. And then in terms of the wider integration scheme, as Patricia outlined earlier, the Chief Executive Officers have agreed to work collaboratively to complete the reviews, and we have identified external support to help progress that through to completion. However, the RAG rating for this has been amended to red, and I think that's reflecting your point earlier, Gordon, that this has been on the agenda for some time now. So progress is being made, but given perhaps the original timelines, and given that the RAG rating is in respect of timelines, then that has been changed to red. And I'll touch on that further on in the report as well, if I may. The self-assessment against the SITFA Financial Management Code is a separate agenda item. It's the last one on today's agenda, so I'll say no more about that just now. The Audit Committee self-assessment will now be supported by colleagues in internal audit as part of the revised internal audit plan for the current year. And the 2022-23 annual accounts external audit report that was presented to the last audit committee has now been added to section 4 of the appendix, or other internal and external audit reports. So you'll see that within appendix 1, where we've included quite a lot of detail. We'll reduce that detail in future versions. Previously, this section included just one overall RAG rating, but I've amended that this time within the current report to split the RAG ratings across the different components that are within item 4 of the appendix. Efforts have been made to avoid duplicate reporting of improvement actions. So where some of the actions on the external audit last year's account are consistent with the actions that Jocelyn has raised through internal audit, year-end reports and through earlier reports, then we've tried to avoid the duplication and only refer to them once within that appendix where possible. So in Appendix 1, timelines you will see have slipped for the resilience and business continuity improvement action. So that is now RAG rated red, and so I really must stress that the RAG rating is in respect of the improvement timelines, and give assurance that we do have core business continuity arrangements in place. The RAG rating is specifically in terms of those timelines and specifically in terms of the improvement actions, not our core business and resilience arrangements. So hopefully that's clear, both in terms of the earlier part and here, that it's timelines. It doesn't mean that we don't have effective systems in place. So that's it. I'll stop at that point and just go back to the recommendation, which is to ask the Audit Committee to note the progress report on improvement actions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. I mean, yeah, that consolidation of the actions is very helpful. I think it makes it clearer to see exactly where we are in terms of progress under the various headings. We've talked about the integration scheme, so I think we're okay there. Although I understand why it's rated red, that makes sense. Similarly with the resilience and business continuity. So there are revised timelines to take us towards the June 24 new completion date. So we'll continue to monitor that over the next few months, hopefully being on track for that new completion date in June of next year. Are there any other comments or questions from members? No, we're happy to. Oops, sorry, Jocelyn.
Right. Thank you, Chair. It's really just a comment, just to make members aware that internal audit were consulted on the format of the report, and we worked closely with Stephen on that. In my opinion, it's a really useful report. You know, it's got a really smart action plan. So I think we welcome it as a development, and it just adds that transparency to the whole reporting of improvement process. And yep, there are reds in there, but I think Stephen very eloquently explained why that's the case. So really just supporting that as a development. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. That's helpful. Yeah, I mean the way my mind works, I'm always drawn to the reds and looking at why they are red. But as long as we have definite plans to achieve, rather than them simply sitting as, you know, it's red because we're not doing anything, then that gives us something to monitor, as I said, over the next few months. Okay, can we agree the recommendations then?
Great.
Okay. So item 9 is the internal audit progress report. I presume this is you, Jocelyn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is the standard progress report that provides you with an update on the Falkirk IJB internal audit plan and on any relevant audits from the partners. So it will show you progress, and I'd also highlight a proposed amendment in the internal audit plan. I'll work on the assumption that members have had the opportunity to read the report and move on to the highlights in section 4. This provides an update on the 22-23 and 23-24 plans, and those are also set out at Appendix 1, which is on page 58 of your papers. So I think just to begin with, to acknowledge that our fieldwork has been delayed. This has been due to long-term sickness within our internal audit team. But I'm pleased to say that I've now taken up post as Chief Internal Auditor. We are fully staffed, and we've appointed a regional audit manager who will hopefully start in mid-December, possibly early January, depending on notice periods. So really, that's the full team in place. So we're going to be absolutely focused on delivering these audits during the remainder of the year. In terms of highlights since the September progress report, and starting with the 22-23 plan and our planned audit of workforce. So members will remember that in our annual report, we recommended reporting to the IJB on delivery of the workforce plan, as well as some redefining of actions within the action plan. Following on from the IJB Development Day in August, which focused on workforce, it's now been agreed that the partnership will do some further work to plan for workforce challenges. That's going to include things like setting clear targets for recruitment and retention, and really just all these things that make sure that current and, more importantly, future demand is met. So that's going to include completing a baseline exercise, and that information isn't available at the moment. That's why we've agreed a date of September 24 for completion of that action. I understand that seems like quite some time away, but the first part of that is identifying the resource to actually complete the task, and you know, starting from a baseline and looking forward, it's really a significant and important piece of work. So I think that September 24 date is actually really quite reasonable. What that means for our plan, though, is that our planned audit FK0423 won't be able to be carried out until that initial work's been completed. So what we've done is we've agreed with Stephen that we'll bring forward our work in the audit committee self-assessment. So we're planning that now. That's going to be progressed as a priority instead of doing that planned workforce audit at the moment. We will, of course, cover workforce planning in our annual report, and we'll also have a look at workforce planning and consider it for inclusion when we're drafting next year's plan. So sticking with that 22-23 plan, just to say that strategic planning, that audit's ongoing, and we're planning to issue a report in December. We've provided our strategic planning principles to management, and the feedback is those have been useful. So we'll validate the outcomes of that and report on these to the next committee. So moving on to 23-24, I've already talked about the bringing forward the audit committee self-assessment, and we do also have a risk management audit due in the next calendar year, which I think will tie in quite well with the programme of deep dives and all the work that's ongoing in that area. Over the winter months, we'll be working on our internal audit annual report. That always falls into the plan for the following year, which is why you don't see it in this paper. The reason for that is, whilst we look back to the year that's been, it's also very forward-looking in terms of recommendations. So that's our full review of governance arrangements in preparation for year-end assurances. So moving on to Appendix 2, we have just the one report from the partner organisations, and that's an NHS Forth Valley one. It's the post-transaction monitoring report of the sale of the West Bank clinic in 22-23. And that report concluded positively that NHS Forth Valley had complied with the procedures in the Property Transactions Handbook. That's all I wanted to go into in detail. I'm happy to take any questions, but I would also ask members to note the progress, agree the proposed amendment, and note the summaries of the relevant reports from the partner bodies.
Okay, thank you, Jocelyn. I'll open it up then for comments or questions. I think those amendments make perfect sense to me in terms of where we are, Jocelyn. The only question I had was around section 4.6, which talks about a revised output sharing protocol coming to risk committees. Is there a timescale for that as yet?
Yes, that's actually out for consultation with my council colleagues. So I would hope to bring that to the next committee. It's really just, we do have one in place. It won't change dramatically, but it's really just firming up the process for sharing those partner organisation reports, and also for whenever we conduct the audits, that kind of reporting protocol, so everyone understands the process through from assignment planning to report clearance to finalisation of reports. So yeah, I would hope that will come to the next meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments, folks? No, we're happy then to agree the recommendations. Yeah, okay, thanks Jocelyn, that's great, and that's a couple of reports we'll look forward to next time round. Can we move on then to item 10, which is the SIPFA Financial Management Code? Stephen, is this back to you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And we are only halfway through the papers. You'll be pleased to hear this is the last report, and Appendix 1 is large, so that's why the papers are distributed as they are. So, sorry about this. So, as a public sector body required to follow the SIPFA Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting, the SIPFA Financial Management Code is also applicable to IJBs. During the audit of our 2021-22 annual accounts, external audit made the recommendation that the IJB conduct a self-assessment against the SIPFA FM code. It should be noted that ensuring compliance with the code is a collective responsibility of the senior leadership team, and consequently, the self-assessment against the code was undertaken by the board at the IJB board development session held on the 6th of October 2023. The outputs from that session are recorded now in Appendix 2. The FM code translates the SIPFA Statement of Principles of Good Financial Management into financial management standards. There are 17 standards to be considered, linked to 6 principles, and these can be found in the FM code within Appendix 1 on page 16. Sorry about this. Compliance with the code became a requirement for all local government bodies back in 2021-22. It requires organisations to demonstrate that the processes they have in place satisfy the principles of good financial management. During the audit of the 2022-23 annual accounts, a revised date for completion of the self-assessment was agreed as the 31st of March 2024. So if we do agree the self-assessment today, we're ahead of the schedule.
69EZU come to reception. That's car registration SL69EZU to reception.
Okay, apologies again for that one too. It's gave my voice a rest for a second. So the joys of working at the stadium today. So where were we? Yeah, so if we do approve this today, we will actually approve this ahead of target. So I think that's a positive. Participants in the board development session completed the self-assessment against each of the 17 standards. The outcomes of the self-assessment, thank you very much, David, are noted in section 4.2 of the report, where it notes that 2 standards are not applicable within the IJB context. 1 standard is considered to be partially met, and 14 standards are considered to be fully met. The partially met standard relates to the medium-term financial plan, and the standard requires the authority to have a rolling multi-year financial plan. Currently, the IJB medium-term plan has been set for 2023-4 through to 2026-27. However, this will require to be updated on a rolling basis going forward, and at that point it will fully comply with the standard. Excuse me a second. Appendix 1 is the large appendix, and that is the full SITFA financial management code. You'll need to go to the very last few pages to find Appendix 2, which is the self-assessment. You'll see in there that there's an extra column beyond what we had at the development session. And that was to consider so that we could add extra context as well as the sort of standard columns that we looked at on the day. So without trying to say too much more, I'll just take us back to the recommendations, which are to ask the Audit Committee to note the requirements of the Financial Management Codes and agree the outcomes of this self-assessment that was carried out at that board development session on the 6th of October. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, we had a really good discussion on this at the development day and went through it in a lot of detail, and it was good to see we are meeting almost all of the relevant indicators there. As you say, that medium-term financial planning one is one that we can fix relatively soon, so that will put us into full compliance, which is great. Again, any questions or comments? Nope. Are we happy then to agree the recommendations? That's great, thank you. Is there any other business to raise today? Nope, not seeing anything. Patricia?
Yeah, I'm just very mindful that this will be Stephen's last audit committee for us as Chief Finance Officer. Stephen will be retiring at the end of December, so really would invite members of the committee to wish him all the best and express their appreciation and thanks for the excellent job he's done as Chief Finance Officer. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add my thanks, Stephen, for all your work over the last couple of years, particularly as Chief Finance Officer. I know it's a very difficult and time-consuming job to do, but such a vital one for the IJB. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for all the reports and input you've given to this committee particularly. And best of luck for whatever you do next.
Thank you, everyone. That was very kind of you. I do hope that we have shown some significant progress over the last year, well, last couple of years, I guess. And I wish my successor all the best in continuing that progress too. And it's been a pleasure working with you. And I don't think any of you have given me too hard a time. So thank you very much for that as well. Okay, on that note, I'll just thank everyone for their input today. I think it's been a useful meeting. We've agreed a fair few things there moving forward, and we're slightly behind. We know we at least have some definite plans for moving forward, so that's a reasonable place to be in. So thanks very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.